Introduction. The encounter with ourselves I am trying to describe in this book is the result of personal experience. Each human being has access to this reality. Lucid, all-encompassing attention is the only instrument we use in order to encounter the mechanical reactions of our mind. We need to specify that this is not an attention directed by will, pursuing a certain purpose or goal, but it is that attention which ensues spontaneously by itself. When a noise or a thought, an image, a desire, or fear appears on the surface of our consciousness, all-encompassing and all-illuminating, it dissipates everything that appears on the mirror of the mind, without leaving any memory residues. In that moment of psychological emptiness, the notion of me disappears, and in the unity of our being, we are integrated into the great whole. Let us also mention that attention is the manifestation of the sacred within us, our divine nature. By enlightening the mind, it dispels and dissipates all darkness, and it unites us with divinity for a split second. A truly healthy mind functions only when it is needed. The rest of the time it must be silent. From this silence or peace all benedictions ensue, spiritual and physical. In that instantaneous moment of stillness of the mind, the ego loses its energies, as well as its intrinsic fictitious importance. The physical body functions perfectly, unhindered by chaotic and stressful thoughts, which cause psychological turmoil and fragment our energy. Intuitive understanding is another important element in the practice of self-knowing. When the mind is silent, through the spontaneous enlightenment of lucid attention, the divine spark within our being guides us through the intuitive impulses, solving any life problems we encounter in the happiest way possible. In any circumstances of life we might find ourselves, let us never resort to compromises regarding the objective truth. Let us never resort to a cloak of lies in order to camouflage the absolute reality of truth. Life, in its movement, newness from one moment to another, is our best teacher and master, for it lays before us a series of events and phenomena that we have to address and encounter. As disciples of life, how do we respond? We simply avoid or reject these events. We oppose or run away from them. In fact, all these events that life lay before us in its eternal movement are meant to benefit and teach us. Our duty is to respond with an impersonal action. Let us therefore immediately fulfill precisely what life requests of us in that particular moment, without being hindered by our personal goals or agendas, selfish by their very nature. Finally, self-knowing also requires something else of us: inner serenity, a fundamental and indispensable condition. We can attain this beneficial harmony no matter what our circumstances may be. All we need to do is ask ourselves, am I whole, here and now, body, mind, and spirit? In this circumstance as well, the light attention helps us realize the integrity of our being. Another essential factor in the process of knowing is the ego, or the personal self, the personality of the surface consciousness. In fact, this ego is not an independent entity with a well-determined content and essence. Rather, it only fulfills certain functions of manifestation within the human being. Therefore, the ego thinks, imagines, judges, assesses, analyzes, accumulates and stores information, knowledge and experiences. It conditions and deconditions us, It stores a large number of memories, and through repetition these memories become permanent. Because of this fiction, the human being becomes a prisoner of what he remembers, knows, or possesses. The ego represents the human being's false nature. It was born out of an erroneous interpretation when the individual became identified with his somatic structure, with the mind and its whole memory content. Because of this erroneous interpretation, a person's entire activity unfolds within a limited perspective of extreme egocentrism. I know, I possess, I have, I want to be, guides his entire activity from birth until he takes his last breath. The ego cannot do anything without a well-defined goal or purpose. Its center of interest is its true God, directing all its actions. The human being is born with certain inclinations and aptitudes, which influenced his existence throughout the long succession of incarnations. The whole past from countless millennia is written in the individual's ego. Therefore, within each man lies various qualities and attitudes. For instance, the toughness of the stone, the cunning of the fox, the greediness of the wolf, and the ferociousness of the lion. In man, these attitudes are even more exasperated. In fact, man's cruelty far surpasses that of a savage animal. Animals kill only in order to feed themselves, compelled by their organic necessities. Why does man kill? Cannibalism was practiced in very distant ancient times. Nevertheless, the hatred, violence, and murder perpetuated by man against man has continued and continues in our so-called cultured and civilized world. Can a sane mind find any rational justification for all the large-scale wars in which, directly or indirectly, almost the whole of humanity participates? Who is responsible for the conflicts between states or alliances of states? Does the fault lie in the leaders, hungry for glory and fame? The leaders are nothing but the creation of the masses of citizens. Each member of that nation contributed to the emergence of the leader through their purely egoic energies. The moral quality of the ruler of a country can only be the creation of each citizen's attitude. This ego is characterized by ceaseless chaotic activity, creating a psychological climate which attracts all the misfortunes that befall a certain region of the planet or country. Ambition, greed, lies, dishonesty, arrogance, pride, and hatred are so frequently encountered in the daily life of each individual that they are considered to be natural, normal attitudes. All these human deficiencies have been mentioned since ancient times. Naturally, a vast range of practices have been devised in order to eliminate them. But all such attempts have failed. There is no need to bring arguments in this regard. A simple overall glance at what we see around us in our daily collective environment, extended to the level of the geographical region or country, and also generally on the entire surface of the planet, and the evidence speaks for itself. Religions, as well as other practices, each promising but not delivering, demonstrate through themselves that they have not created beneficial moral changes compared to the ancient world. On the contrary, religions with their different dogmas and rituals separate and create even further enmity between human beings. The same effects can be noticed when we examine the various philosophical theories and practices, each offering the same deceptive promise of transforming the human psyche. All of these have created nothing more than external masks. Our contemporaries have managed to hide their inner ugliness better than their ancient ancestors. We ask ourselves today, seeing these undeniable results before our very eyes, as facts speak for themselves, what is the fundamental mistake of their approach? All individuals who follow a religious faith or any other type of practice try to realize their being with the help of the mind or the ego. Yet the mind cannot radically transform itself. All it can do is create more superficial changes, a deceptive appearance. In this manner, the practitioner creates a protective mask, carefully hiding his inner ugliness. This psychosomatic mask is nothing but further degradation, that of hypocrisy. Self-knowing is not a faith, nor is it a method to be practiced by pursuing a certain result, goal, purpose, or ideal. As we have shown from the very beginning, the practice of knowing starts from what is, namely the apparition on the mirror of the mind of thoughts, images, and desires, etc. In one word, all manifestations of ego. Encountering them with the flame of light of attention leads to their disappearance. In the simplicity of this encounter, the memory residues which brought us into the present incarnation disappear. This phenomenon finally leads to the state of liberation and to the integration of the human being. In order to better understand this simple encounter with ourselves, let us remember that the ego is closely connected to desire. Therefore, there is no ego without desire, and no desire without the ego. The very source of the ego is desire, taking many forms and facets, one more cunning than the other. Let us also point out that there is no such thing as a holy desire, as some would have us believe. This is why, no matter what its object might be, each desire hides fear in its shadow. Fear of failure, for instance, or not being good enough, or losing what we possess. But fear and holiness are two separate dimensions. The presence of one completely excludes the other. In order to encounter the absolute truth, let us also mention that this truth is indivisible. The fragment of truth existent within us has the characteristics of the whole, from which it was never separated or detached. Only by encountering the truth can the practitioner radically transform the imperfection characteristic of the human being in a state of personal self. Therefore, this simple encounter with our divine nature is also a beneficial, transformative action, devoid of any form of wanting, search, or imagination. Do not be content with mere intellectual understanding, for it is relative and absolutely detrimental, as it only fortifies the authority of the ego. Persistently and diligently try to realize the intuitive understanding that the verse merely points to through a direct, personal experience, by eliminating the memory baggage or the presence of the author. End of introduction. Uniqueness. Uniqueness. I am here, as well as everywhere in the immense infinite. I permeate everything. All is within me. I am present in all. There is nothing outside of me, seen or unseen. I have no cause and no source of creation. I have always been, and I will always be, endlessly. For what has no beginning will have no end. In essence and form, I am a perfect whole. Uniqueness, as unity, encompasses all. It is within each of us, eternally revealing itself. Effort or will are meaningless. Both are forms of struggle creating stress and turmoil. The mind and its structures is but a fragment, unable to encompass the independent sublime. Uniqueness in its natural greatness, existence in the aliveness of life, manifest joy. Therefore the mind must be silent in humbleness. In this silence the being is spontaneously fulfilled, body and mind together, a perfect melting. discover the beauty of life in its sacred flow. All is accomplished through real knowing, living with what is in the present moment, a perfect melting in perfect oneness, a total uniqueness, eternal freshness. Attention is the accompanying light. Its intrinsic value is similar to the sun, dissipating darkness, illusions and anomalies, offering priceless jewels of joy. Uniqueness is, by its very nature, pure simplicity. It is the greatest discovery made by the master of this planet, the human being. This uniqueness of primordial energy is everywhere and in everything, seen or unseen, perceived or unperceived by the human senses. It has always existed and it will always exist eternally. Therefore, it has no creator separate from its own existence. It is unlimited and boundless. We can also call it immensity, encompassing the whole existence. Its center is everywhere and nowhere in particular. It is stillness on the exterior, for it is extended into infinity, and in the interior it is eternal movement, an infinite diversity of forms and manifestations, encompassing all, from forms of gross matter to human beings, the most elevated. Similarly, from galaxies and universes, billions of light years away, the macrocosms to the small infinite, the microcosms, all forms of individual existence have the ability, independence, and potential to evolve on the scale of evolution, the immensity of the divine body awaiting for its children to return home. Therefore, all forms of life within the uniqueness are in perpetual movement and constant evolution, from the most rudimentary to the most subtle. After this quick overall perspective, let us return to us human beings. This uniqueness lies within us as well, as a simple luminous dot, with similar characteristics to the immense and all-encompassing whole. This is, in fact, the spirit existent within each human being, revealing itself by itself, without any need for will, effort, struggle, or imagination, for they only create tensional states of turmoil. The mind as a whole is just a fragment of the incarnated being, unable to encompass the independent sublime, that the divine spark with all-encompassing powers endowing us with a state of pure happiness. Therefore, by using our mind, no matter how knowledgeable, there is no chance of encountering the absolute truth, wisdom, or happiness. The knowing mind must be silent. Only when it is silent, in humbleness, it is endowed with a priceless quality, an incredible spiritual advantage. All this occurs spontaneously, in a flash. When the mind is silent, body and spirit become one in a perfect melting. In this context, the individual functions as a whole, able to discover the beauty of life and to live moments of supreme joy, fueled by the state of being itself, in the eternal moment here and now. If correctly applied, self-knowing leads to the practitioner to this wonderful fulfillment by coming into contact and detaching from the eternal uniqueness manifested in unfolding moments. The succession of moments in perpetual renewal requires that the experiencer employ all his unused neurocerebral potential in order to correctly understand the intrinsic freshness of the movement of the aliveness. For only a new mind is able to truly perceive, understand, and live the beauty of life. The only instrument necessary in order to experience this phenomenon is lucid, all-encompassing attention. It is like a sun or a laser. By its simple presence, all darkness disappears. Therefore, attention, a quality of the sacred within us, dispels, dissolves, and shatters any thoughts, images, desires, fears, etc., which appear on the mirror of consciousness as a reaction of the mind to the encounter with the eternal now. This moment, uniqueness, has no past and will have no future. The unconditional disappearance of these intruders, barging into the present, will naturally and spontaneously provide the priceless advantage of our encounter with the sublime truth. Nothingness. Nothingness is the non-form, the nothing, non-existence. It is also the void of the mind, infinite existence. It includes and permeates all that exists in the universe. It has no limits, no bounds. After the seventh level of consciousness, we become only what is, boundless in its totality. Thinking becomes immensity. This is the nothingness holding everything together in orbit. Planets and galaxies, all matter and forms. Therefore, from now on, all is just simple being. The threshold of the whole eternity with boundless thinking. A thought can be placed anywhere in a flash, on the moon, the sun, or any galaxy, spontaneously. The state of being, a state of godliness. We are oneness with God. We are eternal love, moment to moment, intertwined with emotion. This is the potential of every human being. Self-knowing, through natural being, is the simplest path towards this real experience, encountering the deceptive mechanical mind with the light of attention. The right encounter instantly dissipates it. In the psychological emptiness, the new man appears, affirming his existence as sublime action. Joy and happiness integrated as one. Never accept that this simplicity is difficult. Only the ego affirms this, not the sacredness of our own being, as creative will, constant intelligence in perpetual change. Nothingness is the void, non-existence, the nothing, the no thing. Simultaneously, it is also the infinite, the existence, which permeates all that exists in the boundless universe. It has no limits, therefore it is boundless. Therefore it is boundlessness. Each time we realize the state of being, we also experience boundless thinking, which is in fact the same immensity we can also call nothingness. This nothingness holds all the planets, stars, galaxies, and universes in orbit, as well as all their content. Therefore, in a simple state of no mind, we encounter the eternal state of being, which is, in fact, the infinite energy of God. Practically, we are in the state of boundless thinking. In a split second, we can place a thought on the moon, the sun, or any galaxy. When we truly encounter the state of being through personal experience, we realize our godliness, for in that sublime moment we and God are in perfect communion, manifested as eternal love. Therefore each of us, woman or man, is endowed with this natural functional capacity. It is attained with the help of lucid and all-encompassing attention, which instantly dissipates the mechanism of the delusive, illusory mind. As soon as this psychological void or peace of the soul appears, the new man affirms his existence and sublime behavior as unconditional love, joy, and happiness, free from any external motivations. Never affirm that the fulfillment of simplicity is difficult. Such a foolish statement belongs to the degraded ego, and not to the sacredness of being that we are, endowed with creative will and constant intelligence in perpetual change. I am boundlessness. I am spontaneous simplicity, mind, heart, and feeling, a whole being, absolute fullness, love in action. This state reveals itself naturally. When the mind is awakened, all becomes one. The past melts away in the light of all-encompassing attention. In emptiness, the sacred reveals itself in its natural brilliance. Experiencing the moment, the personal mind is dissipated, expanding into infinity as universal mind. Each such encounter transforms us radically, for in each sparkle of consciousness we are newness, divinity, reality. Detachment from words. The word is just a symbol. Its meaning is limited, an association of images created by man throughout time. It has a certain sense in verbal communication, buried in estimations and mental conclusions. It is never reality, only a product of time, creating duality and obscuring the brightness of life. Through programmed confusion, the limited ego ceaselessly repeats itself in thought and speech. The detachment from words carries within itself the whole mystery. In such a state, truth is revealed. The individual is liberated, lucid and attentive in movement. He is not a slave of words. He is silence in action. By silently watching the reaction of the word, it immediately disappears, and in its ineffable climate, a precious integration ensues, a priceless light, dissipating all darkness. Man fulfills his being. When the individual is not a slave of the mental residue, the world he is in a direct relationship, moving without thoughts in an all-encompassing embrace. The self is dissolved by the integral being, pulsating ceaselessly. In such a state, all he encounters, he understands. He can describe and explain according to its law. He uses words to express this true, real, and alive experience to others. The spoken or written word represents, among others, the usual means of communication between human beings in the dimension of the known. Words are mere symbols endowed with certain meanings. Their sense is chosen by convention, yet their value is always relative, as they can never express reality in itself. The essence of a fact, no matter how broad their sense, they are nevertheless limited, especially when they try to express something beyond the limited dimension. The word is not only unable to express reality, but it also represents a hindrance, obstructing the direct experience of life. For this reason, it is absolutely necessary to detach from any words. An instrument of mental expression, the word is used in the limited realm of knowledge. It is undeniably useful within this dimension. Nevertheless, beyond the limited, it can never have access to the infinite, no matter how broad its content of expression. Only by being detached from words are we able to come into direct contact with the truth, with reality, in a state of bliss. The word is noise and limitedness. Through its automatisms, it creates confusion and conflictual states, preventing us from encountering love, harmony, and living in a state beyond time and space. When thinking is silent, words also disappear, For thoughts affirm their existence in the form of words. Let us try, each for himself, for each of us has the potential to realize this mysterious detachment. Without it, it is impossible to encounter eternity. First of all, we must exclude any desire, purpose, ideal, or goal from the very start. This beginning is absolutely essential in order to correctly make this experiment. Any prior motivation is nothing but a mental projection, part of the limited dimension. Therefore, free of purpose, motives, or goals, we simply observe the wandering of the mind. We just listen and watch with a full attention. Any desire, emotion, image, or the whole cerebral activity without creating any conversation in our head. This direct contact, in its simplicity, effortlessly ends the entire movement. Thus, the mind is empty of its whole content in the span of the moment. In this flash of consciousness, it becomes completely inactive, able to encounter the new, the boundless. The emptiness of the mind attained in this indirect and totally disinterested manner can be called the state of meditation and the beginning of self-knowledge. In this state, we detach from the old and melt with the new, with the ceaseless movement of the aliveness. On the great journey of knowing oneself, we set off as a being free from the past, and we end the encounter just as free from the moment we have just experienced. The new appears spontaneously in the mirror of our soul. In a perfect state of equilibrium, we express it in simple words, easy to understand by everyone.